I have a lot of beautiful friends, but I would not go into business with all of them.
Tell us about the business.
ESFit. And so what we did was we were just posting online workouts. Like with any business, you got to think, okay, what's a pain point I'm experiencing? And for us, that pain point was, if you've got the gift of communication, you should be doing something like a YouTube channel or a podcast. You should be giving that gift an outlet. You're such a good communicator. You should have a podcast.
Welcome to HPM. In this show, we bring you different high performers from different walks of life who they aim to discover what is the mindset that enables them to continuously perform at a high level. All right, before we kick off with today's guest, if you can do me the small favor and subscribe to this channel, I'll truly appreciate it, and it'll help me bring you more and more high performers to this show. This is the High Performance Mindset, and today's guest, Erika De Pellegrin. Enjoy this episode. Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've had a successful e-commerce business in the fitness space. You're a lawyer as well, and you have a very impactful podcast, The Balance Theory. I want to dive deep today's episode into the way you think, the way you process. And I think a big part of our mindset comes from our exposures, and it's not like overnight you just have this high-performing mindset. You know, it's through years and years. So I want to go back into time, into your childhood. Like, what would your day look like after school?
You're taking me way back now. I think it's fair to say I was one of those kids that I really did love school. I loved learning. I had parents who really encouraged me to do well at school and take it seriously. And whether it was good or bad, I feel like my mum especially was quite a key player in this. She was one of those kind of tough love kind of parents. She would never write me an excuse for not doing my homework. If I got in trouble in the rare occasions, I was, a pretty good kid. She would never make excuses, always push me to take accountability. I was the oldest of four, so I feel like that also comes with the title of being the firstborn. And I feel like that combination of tough love and taking school seriously at a young age made me take that approach towards my own learning and my own education. And as I said, I did genuinely enjoy it. And I think it also helps when you are good at something you enjoy. It kind of fuels that fire. And so I did very well through school, both primary and high school. And I think that when you start to get that feedback externally from teachers, from the marks you're getting, results from exams that you're doing well, it really does fuel that. I think later in life that has served me in both good and bad ways from a self-value point of view and where I look for validation. But I think if we're just looking at growing up, I think I always had this inner drive to do well because of the way my parents made me appreciate or kind of look at school and how they would kind of helped me skew my discipline from a young age and take things like doing my homework very seriously, making sure I was reading, things like that. So I do owe it to them, I guess, that inner fire that was built from a young age in terms of how I looked at my own discipline and enjoyment towards my education.
How would you say they used to, let's say, motivate you?
It was probably in like a reverse psychological kind of way. Like, I don't know, if I think of anything even non-school related, like you're not leaving this table until you finish your food, or I don't know. It was always like that reverse kind of in a negative way. So potentially a little bit out of fear, but it did have one impact, which was it got me to have accountability. I think as well there were plenty of opportunities growing up where my parents, and I really hope this is something I can pass on when I get the opportunity to have children as well, they taught me to do things myself rather than do things for me. So I was always encouraged to think for myself, even in situations where things would happen or we'd have options per se, rather than make that decision for me. It would always be a reflective kind of moment. And I think that definitely plays a role in how I think today and how that was born.
Let's say summer holidays, they used to make you go work, or was it just all play?
Definitely activities. So we definitely did like the tennis camps and just being active and trying new things. I remember growing up, I did a lot of different sports and I didn't love them all. That's the honest truth. But I was put into a lot of different sports until I found something I really liked, which for me was netball. I really liked netball and I played that for a good 13 years all through school. As I got older, I can't remember honestly if they made me get a job or if it was myself wanting to get a job. As I said, I think by the time I was 13, 14, which is roughly the age you get your first cash part-time weekend job in Australia, I can't remember if it was them or because I was so independent and just wanted, actually, you know what it was? I think being one of four, and I didn't come from a very well-off family, it was one of those things where if I wanted more money to spend on the weekend, I had to kind of make it myself. And we were comfortable. That's not to say we weren't, but there wasn't this surplus of cash I could just use as I wanted. So I think originally I wanted a job just so I had that extra $20, $30 to just go out with my friends on the weekend and not have to ask all the time. I still don't like that feeling of being dependent. And so I think that's what drove me to get a job.
I definitely
originally
can relate to that. I remember I would miss out a lot of outings because I wouldn't want to go and ask my dad, even though I know even if I ask, I'm not asking for much, but it's just whatever enough to go out. But I don't know if it's ego, is it pride, is it?
I think it's also maybe, I don't know if you resonate with this, maybe it could be like a respect thing too. I feel like I didn't want to ask I felt like it was a disrespectful thing in a way. Like I didn't want to ask them. It felt a bit selfish.
Honestly, I think now that I'm thinking about it, a part of it is guilt for not doing so well in school. And then coming to the weekend and bring up the topic of wanting to go out and ask. So yeah, a bunch of all that. So you were into netball. How far did you get with that, like during school?
So we had basically a core group. We played together for 13 years. So it was honestly more a passion and fun thing. We didn't really go. We just played in the local the local tournament they had there between the different suburbs.
You guys won anything?
Yeah, we actually had a really good team and we had a lot of fun. But once we finished high school and everyone started uni and moving to different suburbs, everyone just kind of slowly started to pull away. And I think my love for it was really tied to the team spirit. That was us playing all together. We all knew where each other would be at every pass, at every situation. We'd played together for that long. I didn't even need to call for people. I just knew where they would be. So losing that just wouldn't feel the same playing or continuing with like half the team. I would play again. I think I'd like to play. Actually, you've jotted my memory now. Maybe I should look at local comps here.
And yeah, it would be interesting to check in Dubai. And you told me you were a captain. Was it in
primary school captain?
In which sport?
So it wasn't a sports captain. It was school captain. So of the school. We had the way they do it in Australia is you have one for the school and then you have one for each of the sports teams. And then they have like one for religion and different themes. But I was like the prime minister.
You think that played a role in your identity?
I definitely think there's an undercurrent to my identity of leadership, and having that experience at such a young age, I think definitely played a concrete role in cementing that, or at least giving me a taste of it, even though it was year 6, your responsibilities aren't that high.
But I think it's good to start early. I think we underestimate like how much impact it could have.
Well, what's funny? I'd say like the biggest part of being in that role was speaking, right? And it's funny how much of a key, it's almost come back full circle. I mean, I love debate. I did do a little bit of debating in school and public speaking, but I stopped that through high school. But in my captain role, I had to, introduce assemblies and kind of moderate different events and stuff. And it's so funny that now I'm like in the podcasting space. I've recently been involved in Dubai Active. I was moderating panels and speaking on stage, and that's all stuff I really love, which I'd really not had the opportunity to do in the last 5 to 10 years at all. So you're right. It definitely cemented something that never fully bloomed, but is still there and finding its feet now, I'd say.
I'm guessing you have also passion for psychology and personal development.
Absolutely.
When did that kick in?
I'd say after school, probably around my 20s. 20.
What did you get exposed to, or who?
I think I've always been a very introspective kind of person. Like I've always had the habit of sitting with problems or issues and just really thinking about it, like thinking before I act. I'm not a very reactive kind of person. You know, I'm Italian, but I maybe not on the out, like from that point of view, I'm not really that Italian. I feel like Italians have a rap for being quite explosive and emotional, and I'm really not like that at all. My 3 siblings they're very explosive in a household. I'm more where they always call me the diplomat if fire's going down in the house and everyone's having an argument. So I think inherently I have that side of me. I'm a little bit more introspective and thoughtful. But I think when I started to seek it out more myself it probably coincided with being at university and thinking, is this what I want to do? And then I think that just opened up the can of worms for, well, who am I? What do I actually want? What is my life now? Where do I want it to be? And that's when I started like being interested in podcasts and self-development books, and eventually led to everything else that came after it.
Do you feel also going through the debate experience that also played a role in you being like a diplomat?
I'm not sure if it's like a chicken or an egg situation, if I was already like that and then I leaned into debating because I had that natural interest, or if that contributed further. I'm not sure. I think it's probably the former. I think I probably have always been that way, and that's probably why I was interested in debating.
And then you studied law. Mm-hmm. You went to law school and you completed, and you're a lawyer right now. Why law? Like, was it always an interest?
No, this might sound a bit superficial, but I feel like someone said to me at a very young age, you'd be a great lawyer. And it's just, you know, when people just say things that just stick in your head. And it was always there in the back of my head. And I remember applying for university at the time. We had to like put in our preferences online. It was before our marks came out. And I'd put in media and international studies, no law. And then there was like 12 hours left on the thing. And I went back in and I thought, why don't I just put it in? You know, it was always in the back of my head, so you'd be a good lawyer. And I thought it's such a good degree that it'd be so good to have that. It's such a great job, right? There's a lot of work. You can earn a lot of money. It'd be a good option to have. It wasn't that I was like super passionate about it. And so I just put it in. I thought, you know what, if I get the marks, I can decide not to do it, but at least I've got the option. And I ended up getting the marks. And so I ended up doing a double degree of law and media. So I still did the media, which again, it's funny how now I'm in podcasting, which is in that media space. And, you know, before we jumped on the podcast, we were having this conversation briefly, and I remember going through a phase where I almost a few years into the degree, and I was actually working in a cafe at the time. And I loved it. I loved hospitality. I love food. I love coffee. I love interacting with people. And no one's upset when they're sitting in a cafe. You know, everyone's in a happy mood. Everyone's happy to be there. Everyone's happy to see you. And I loved the buzz. Like, it was a really busy cafe. It was a lot of momentum. And I honestly almost dropped out of law to open my own cafe. And then I almost transferred into law and psychology, but that was going to add like 5 years to my degree. So I thought, no way. So I had this like itch I need to do something a little bit different. I need to explore this side of me that's not 100% fulfilled by this degree. I don't know if this is it for me.
You remember when did that feeling arose in you?
I think it was probably the 3rd year of law school. So I was deep enough into it to be like, I'm far enough in now
to know what it is,
to get a feel for if I like this or not. But I have to say, law in practice to law in a degree, and I think a lot of people probably have this experience, is completely different. It's very theoretical in the degree, and then in practice I feel like the theory really serves you if you are in a more lawmaking decision, or you're going back to universities and teaching.
Academically,
yeah. But in practice it was so different. So
you remember your experience in uni in terms of did you struggle with it? Was it a breeze, or?
I don't know if anyone would say law school's a breeze.
that's why I'm trying to get into. So what was your mental journey like?
I became a speed reader because it was like hundreds of pages of reading a week. I love writing. I love reading and writing. They're skills that come quite naturally to me, but the content was very, very heavy. And I'll actually share a comment. My first partner, my first boss, said to me that with hindsight is so true about uni. And that is, it's not what you learn in the degree that says something about you. It's not even the mark you get about the content you learn. It's the fact that you've gone through a degree, the resilience and the persistence to complete it and graduate. That's the value that comes out of going to university. And that's always stuck with me, because I think back to particular topics I did that I'll probably never revisit. But the fact that I sat there and pushed through and sat exams and passed things that I didn't enjoy or had to wrap my head around, even if it wasn't easy to me. I mean, yes, some things came naturally, but a lot didn't. A lot of it was new. I think that is the value of going through a university degree. And I really appreciated that he said that to me, because it was like, you see my value beyond just what my number was at the end of my degree. And if we move that back to what we were talking about at school, like when you get marks, that's like a sign of your value, right? And even now, like if I was to move and look for jobs, they just look at very black and white, your resume. They don't consider who you are as a person. That's not a blanket statement for everyone, but I feel like in heavy corporate kind of environment, that is the approach. And so I really appreciated that comment, and it's always stuck with me, because your value is so much more than just a number or a single metric that can't account for all the other beautiful qualities you have as a human.
In terms of, let's say, study-wise in uni, what are the things you needed to adapt? Let's say, required you making sacrifices, or shows your resilience?
It's fair to say I was a massive social butterfly back then. All through school, actually, I was. And so I actually used it more as like a reverse motivation. So instead of saying I can't go to all these things because I have to study, I would use that as fuel to kind of pull me through and like make me sit there and study. So if I wanted to go out that night, I had to finish all the things on my to-do list. So I actually use it as reverse motivation, because I didn't want to miss out on anything. I didn't want to miss out on events. I always wanted to be doing things. Of course, there were those times when exams came around where you had to be disciplined and say no, because I've never been one of those people. Like my sister, for example, is one of those last minute people that will not do anything for 2 weeks. And the day before it's due, even my fiance is like this, the day before it's due, they'll just stay up all night and do it. I have never understood that. That's just not how my brain works. And sometimes I wish it was. I'd love to just be able to smash it out under pressure at the last minute. But I like doing things incrementally and being very prepared. And I think the thing is, like, I know if I do, let's just say a first draft, even if I'm thinking about a podcast episode, if I give myself time to think about it, I can add so much more value because I let myself stew over it. Again, it's like I'm very introspective. I really like sitting with things. So being last minute was never my thing. So I always knew, okay, I've got this big social weekend, so I need to study so I can make it to those things. So I think rather than sacrifice, I use the potential of sacrifice as a little bit of a motivator.
Yeah, I'm trying to think for a person who's more on like your fiance and your sister, definitely been that type. And I'm trying to build more with giving myself more time, to be consistent at something like with, I feel like I keep mentioning this with every episode, but pursuing Ironman, because it's such a big goal, and if you're trying to accomplish it in a short span of time, Ironman cannot happen overnight. It's all depending on what's your fitness level. Mm-hmm. But if your fitness levels is down, then you have to put your body through, certain stress and build the stimuli over time. You can't go from running 3K to 24K in 1 week. And that beats that habit of keeping things last second out of you. Mm-hmm. It's not a choice. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do how you process things, what's your personality, inclination.
Doesn't matter.
None of that, right? You have to show up and show up and show up. Mm-hmm. And regardless, you had the best, you try your best in terms of your diet, your nutrition, your sleep, your hydration, all of these elements. Also, there's also showing up and when you're dehydrated and still, it's an interesting journey. So I want to know, like, usually when you start a project, like what do you tell yourself to get started? Because I'm sure a lot of people who want to give themselves time to prepare for a particular paper, or particular competition, or a particular episode. One, to start preparing early, but they start procrastinating and doing other stuff.
Sure.
So usually, how do you get yourself to start early?
I do want to say one thing before I answer that. I think for some people, right, we're all very different.
Right.
I think for some people that works for them because they work well under pressure. And without that pressure, they don't have a reason to start early, right? So then maybe a reverse engineer way of looking at it would be, what pressure or why can you give yourself to start early? What would that give you, right, as a trade-off? Because if you need that pressure or that push to start something, and that normally comes in the form of time because it's at the last minute, then maybe you can think about another why you can layer on top to make it more urgent for you to start it earlier. You know, would that give you, for me, for example, that gives me more time and space to re-review it. So I'll answer your question now. For example, if I have something I need to do or a podcast I'm planning, I sit down when I'm feeling creative. And I think this is the biggest thing. And this is why it would stress me out to leave it last minute. Because for something creative like a podcast, you need to be in that flow of creativity. Because if I try force that in a day where I can't really concentrate, I'm feeling a little bit distracted, what I produce is not my best work. And that's just the fact. So that's why I like giving myself a lot of time, because I wait for that creative bubble and I let myself ideate. I let myself just draw down ideas. Sometimes I'm able to just write something really long and it's almost just like a brain dump, right, of what's in my head. That's not always going to be fit for purpose at the final product.
Do you have a particular way of getting yourself in that mind space, or a particular way you get yourself, or a particular time in a day?
I think definitely mornings for me is normally when that burst comes. I'm definitely more a morning energy person. And I think if I can align the right things, like if I've eaten properly the day before, if I've slept properly that night, if I can start my day with a workout, come home, shower, and then not have anything on the rest of the day. I think when I've got like events planned later on in the day, that almost gives me a cap on how much time I've got. So it's almost like on my podcast, The Balance Theory, I talk about this block that might be useful for some of your listeners, and it's called no agenda time. So when I'm scheduling out or time blocking my week, I like using no agenda time. And that doesn't mean that I do nothing. It means, okay, if I put no agenda time on a Saturday from 10 till 2, that means in that time, I can do whatever I feel like when I get to that time. Because I've had so many instances in the past where I commit to things weeks ahead, and then when I get to that weekend, I'm like, I can't be bothered doing this anymore, because on that day I don't have that energy that I had 4 weeks ago when I said yes. So I think having no agenda time is a good regular practice to get yourself in the moment, asking yourself, what do I feel like doing? How's my energy? What do I want to do? If it's sit in bed with some tea and Netflix, you do that. If you want to socialize, do that. If you want to go for a run, do that. It's more, what do I feel like I want to do in this moment, in this period of time? So to get myself in that headspace, sometimes it's just having a bit of no agenda time. It's just that no capped space to be, but I'm not always creative when I plan to be creative. You know, if I had the golden ticket to make that happen, that would be great. So having more time means if I get to the weekend and I had planned to be creative and I'm just not, I can say, you know what, I'm going to try again next weekend because I know I've got time. Right? It's not, oh, if I don't do it this weekend, I'm stuffed because I have to do an episode on Monday. So that's why I like giving myself time. So for anyone listening who's like, you know what, I find myself stuck in that juncture where I'm trying to be creative, but I'm forcing it, then your why or your pressure that you can put on yourself is having that space so you can optimize that creative period when it comes. Because I'll be honest, it's not every day I'm feeling creative. Especially as a female, we go through a lot of hormonal changes throughout the month. So that's something I'm mindful of as well. So I just like giving myself space and being way ahead. And I think being organized is the biggest thing for me, which gives me then the freedom. So for example, on my podcast, I'm always a month ahead at least. Scheduled, edited, everything. I think I've had 1 week where I've been like 1 week behind, and that's not good for my personality type. So I think just finding your why and what would it give to you, right, to not procrastinate and do it early. and then give yourself that as a reward, whether it's time, whether it's space to re-review or just do other stuff. You know, find something that makes sense for you, because what makes sense for you, Hisham, or me, like, it's not going to work for everyone. So I think finding a strong enough why for people to beat the procrastination is going to be important.
Yeah, and being clear on it.
Getting clarity. That's right.
Getting clarity, yeah. Since we're on the podcast topic, the balance theory, this is not referring to Fritz haters.
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay.
It wasn't copyrighted either.
Because when I looked into it, I found there's
I've seen it. It says I think it's in Science or...
Yes,
yeah, there's
more.
No,
So
it's not related to that.
So, okay, how...
That's a coincidence.
So your balance theory podcast, how did you come about it?
It's really funny. I didn't ever think to do a podcast. And this is honestly exactly how it happened. It was New Year's Day, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And my fiance and I were driving back. We went away with some friends for New Year's Eve. And it was January 1st and we were driving home. And we had put on, Gary Vee. We had Gary Vee on in the car, and he's quite motivational and uplifting and like geeing us up for the new year. And he said something in this podcast we were listening to. He said, if you've got the gift of communication, you should be doing something like a YouTube channel or a podcast. You should be giving that gift an outlet. And my fiance paused it and he looked at me and he said, "You're such a good communicator. You should have a podcast." And in that moment, the only way I can explain to you is I just felt this overwhelming sense of calm. It was almost like a sign, or my intuition, whatever everyone listening believes in, that's what I should be doing. That was just the feeling I had. I had no idea what the podcast would be about. I didn't even know the first place to go to start it. But I just had this inner feeling that it was the right thing for me to do. And I've had that very rarely in my life, very few moments, personal and work. That was one of them. And that was it. I just started at that point looking into, okay, well, if I'm going to have a podcast, what am I interested in? What do I want to talk about? I think this aligned around the time, it was probably a few years after I had started getting interested in personal development. It was a few years after I thought, am I going to do psychology? So I was already kind of interested in these kind of topics, anything related to bettering myself. And I'm a very curious kind of personality, and I really love learning. Again, from school, we spoke about that earlier. So I think this really just came to be as a combination of my personal interests. And the biggest thing for me at that point in time was I had all these things happening in my life. I was working as a lawyer. I had a big friendship circle. I had a massive priority on my health and fitness. And then I wanted to start this podcast as well. And so obviously it's like time. How do I manage my time to do all these things? And I think there was an undercurrent. I'm not sure if you either feel this now or have felt this in the past, where you're almost made to feel like wellness and success are in two separate camps, in the sense where if you want to be successful, it's that hustle culture, throw everything at what you're trying to do at the expense of everything else until you achieve it, right? It's like that grind until work now, enjoy later kind of mentality. And I feel like with this generation that's coming up now and the time we live in now, there's so many opportunities where that's not true. You can make money in ways that were not possible 20 years ago. You can have an online career and live anywhere in the world. And so I think the definition of building something and what we can achieve and the possibility of what that is changing a lot. And what that means is I think we can enjoy now and work hard now. I think there is an element of sustainable success. And that's not to say people can't be successful having that grind, all or nothing kind of mentality. But that doesn't interest me, because I saw a lot of people have that kind of life. Even it was people I used to work for, all the way through to, Fortune 500 CEOs, where they would be very, very successful. But what did it cost them? Their health. They had no relationship with their children. I'm speaking obviously of people I knew personally. And that wasn't a life that I wanted at all. So I started to get really curious on, okay, what does the idea of balance mean? And can we make it work in a way where driven and ambitious people can find a way to make that make sense for them? Is there a way we can have some level of balance while still being ambitious and successful? And so that's kind of how, that was a curiosity where it came from. And that's where the balance theory kind of started.
I wanted to take your take on this, because you are a high achiever, you're a go-getter. You going through the law school journey speaks for itself. Not everybody gets in and comes out the other side.
In one piece.
It won't be. Is it a must for you to push yourself until, going through a burnout just for you to know what's your actual capability? Because when you're not going all in, right, you actually don't know what's your capacity. Like with any endeavor, whether it's a workout, whether it's, if you're always playing it safe, But then again, I know this from endurance training that if I don't do conditioning, if I don't hydrate well, then I'm asking basically for an injury to pop up at some point. If I'm constantly just going hard, for me, it's like, how do you? Of course, I've a lot of people that I've seen who actually went through that burnout and then came back and managed to give the wellness priority and managed to be disciplined also with it while still performing. These guys have like the best balance. After that, they already know how to push, and go there. So yeah, what's your take?
I think this is a really interesting question, to be honest. And I'll start by saying I have experienced burnout, which is probably what led me to have this curiosity in the first place. Now, the question of whether it's necessary to kind of know what your upper limit is, right? Because otherwise, how do you know? I'm careful to say that that's something everyone should go through, because it's a tough period where you really have no energy, and it takes a long time because it's a depletion of your adrenal fatigue, or that's what I went through anyway. So it's physical as well as it is mental, and it takes time to bounce back.
Okay, you mind sharing your experience?
Yeah, for me it was it almost just felt like motivation was nowhere to be seen. I was just doing.
What was it like, and why did you push so hard? Why did you needed to go in that?
I think
mindset?
for me it was this. I think it came from this inner need to achieve, to feel valuable, right? And I think, as I said earlier on in the podcast, like that push to do well at school and my love for doing well at school, it was a double-edged sword for me. It was good because it created this really driven personality, but it was bad on the other side because it created this adult who felt like that was her only worth. And that's taken me a long time to unlearn. I'm still in the process of doing it. It's not a quick overnight switch. But I think with the burnout, it came from...
This is during law school or?
It was after. It was after.
Okay. You already started working?
Yeah, I'd already started working. I think it was just this, I need to do more. I need to do more. This feeling that nothing was ever enough. I need to do more.
I think that comes from being competitive, right?
Yeah, competitive. And I think anyone that's kind of driven and like a high performer, I think has that inner pull, like you feel like nothing's ever
constantly
enough.
Trying to level up.
Yeah. And I'll 100% say like that's a beautiful quality to have. It's so good. Like you create so many opportunities for yourself. But I think for me, the gift it gave me was an awareness of where is that coming from? You mentioned ego before. And I think sometimes it can be deeply rooted in the ego and a need to self-fulfill, feel important in and of yourself. Whereas if it's coming not from a place where you need those achievements or those things to feel valuable as a human, then that's a little bit more positive, right? And that's the kind of direction I'm moving into now. So back to your question. I think when it comes to burnout, there are signs before you get to burnout. It's not, for some people it might feel like they just wake up burnt out one day, but I guarantee you that there are signs along the way. You start to feel your energy drop. The quality of your sleep isn't great. You start feeling less motivated with things, and they slowly build up to a point where you're like, I can't get off the couch right now because I just have no energy. I remember I went through this phase where I was like on working, fired up, and then I'd get to the holidays and I'd get sick every time. Every time I take a holiday.
that happened.
Yeah, I would get
with
sick.
Me a lot.
I would get sick every time. And it was like I just did not give my body and my mind any moments in those periods in between. It was like I saw them as sprints with like 100% rest in between. And unfortunately, like for me anyway, in my experience, my body just doesn't work operating in those two extremes. So what I've kind of learned from that experience is finding a way to have rest and my health as an ongoing priority rather than just fitting it in when I have time outside of hustle periods, right? And what I've actually learned, this forms a part of the balance theory now, is that makes me better at my job. If I can prioritize my sleep, if I can move every day, if I can eat homemade meals, these things give me energy and they actually make me better at what I do. So even I could be spending the same amount of time, but I'm more productive because I've actually filled my own cup first. I've made time for things that are important to me. And that was my whole interest in starting the podcast. It wasn't, don't work on the weekends or don't do overtime because you need a rest. Like, I feel like that's quite a soft approach, which for my personality, I feel like I'm almost, again, old tendencies, not doing enough if I fully embrace that. So I had to find a way that fed my high performer kind of appetite whilst kept my health as a priority. And so for me, that was finding a way to keep, and the way I talk about it on the podcast, right, is if you look at I have the 3 areas of your life: your health, your relationships, and your fulfillment. And if we look at those areas like gardens, the question is, how do I keep them alive at the same time? The most important thing to understand that I've come to realize is that, like with different gardens, there's seasonality. Some are winter vegetables, some are summer vegetables. And so there's going to be different periods of life where one garden will need more attention than the others. But that doesn't mean we ignore the other gardens completely. But what we do that in life sometimes, we do neglect our, if something comes up in our health. I know a lot of people in my circle, and maybe everyone listening can resonate with this, where something comes up in their health, something is wrong that needs urgent attention, then they ignore everything else. Or you go through a really busy period at work and your health and your relationships get completely ignored. And if we're looking at our areas like gardens, then those areas are going to die. And by the time we have time to go back and regenerate them, it's going to take a lot more time and effort to get them off the ground. So my curiosity is, what are your non-negotiables in the areas of your life that you can maintain on an ongoing basis? And I always say to the balancers, that's what I call the listeners of the show, don't overdo it. You don't need a 50-step routine for every area of your life. Really, really simply, for example, for my health, it's 8 hours of sleep. It's movement every day. That's non-prescriptive, so it can be a walk or it could be a gym sesh, whatever I feel like. It's eating home-cooked meals and drinking enough water. Right? Because I know if I have those things, I can perform and live and do the things I want to do with the energy I need. With my relationships, it's having one quality date time with my fiance a week. We're both very busy. So if we can get we have a half day on a Sunday at the moment, which is just for us.
This is like, you guys have to go out, or is it all,
no,
or it could be at home?
We can be at home. It's just spending quality time. So for me, that means no phones. And we're just doing something together, right? The other one is we play cards.
And you guys block out an evening, or is it like we're just 1 hour? Or?
At the moment, it's Sunday mornings. So that's what works for us, because he's in trading, he's in finance. So he works on US times. So living here in Dubai, he's working from like 5 p.m. till like 1, 2 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
So our schedules are opposite. But the other thing we do is after dinner, we'll just play 10, 15 minutes of cards. So the thing with these non-negotiables is they don't have to be long. It's just about the quality of them and the impact they have on your life. For you, it might be 10 minutes of reading for your health, your mental health. What we basically do on the show is we say, okay, if these are gardens and you're looking for your non-negotiables, they're like your sun and your water, right? They're the basics the garden needs, the bare essentials in order to survive. Then if we bring back the element of seasonality, right? So then you go through a period of work that's crazy, that needs you to be working overtime, weekends. You say, okay, I can give space to this seasonality, this crazy period of my life, but I'm still going to keep my non-negotiables in place. I'm still going to make sure I'm getting my 8 hours of sleep, home-cooked meals, water, and daily movement. Sometimes, yes, that means instead of 45 minutes, I have to go down to 20 minutes. It could be a quick Pilates session. So it's just about, you really have to spend the time getting clear on what your non-negotiables are in each of the areas of your life. And by the way, this kind of theory and concept for me has developed more and more over time, over the years, as I've put it in practice and spoken about it more and more. But doing that, getting clear on your non-negotiables as the first layer of balance is just such a good way for you to understand what's important for you at this moment in time. Because the truth is, balance is not a one-size-fits-all formula. It's going to look different between me and you. And not only that, for me, at different moments in my life, those non-negotiables are going to change. When I was 18, I certainly didn't care about 8 hours of sleep. So it gives you the flexibility to adapt and adjust and progress these non-negotiables as time goes on. We have a second layer for priorities, but I might take up too much time talking about it. But that's essentially the baseline of balance. And I guarantee if I'm having a week that I feel off and I come back to my non-negotiables, there's something I've been neglecting. So it's a good personal check-in from me to me.
And in terms of content creation, like when did you get serious with you want to be consistent and keep pushing content?
I think from day one.
Okay.
I'm kind of one of those people, I don't half do anything. So I was like, if I'm doing a podcast, I need to promote it. Where am I promoting it? On social media. So I've always been on sharing content, whether it's clips from the episode or stories or...
I mean, you're a content creating machine. Like,
oh, thank you. It doesn't come, honestly, it really doesn't come naturally to me. It's something I've had to really learn and fine tune. And
so where do you find the time to do all these videos?
well, if we go back to the gardens of our life, so the third one I didn't speak about, which is fulfillment. So a lot of people would call the third area work, right? But for me, what fulfills you and what really sits outside of your relationships and your health is so much more than just work. We always limit ourselves to what's your job. You know, when you meet people, it's like, what do you do for work? It's always the first question, right? But we're so much more than our jobs. Like if I told people I'm a lawyer, misses the full picture of all of this that I love, podcasting, fitness, all those kinds of things. So that third garden fulfillment is work, hobbies, studies, and anything else you would put in that category. So for me, it's like, okay, I know my non-negotiable for my job is a 40-hour work week. That's the bare essential. For my podcast, I know it's about 4 to 5 hours of work a week as a bare minimum. So where do I put that in? I put it in, sometimes it's like after work, it depends if I don't go overtime and I've had a less intense day and I have mental capacity left over, but more often than not, it's a Saturday. So that's when I put in the time. That's when I plan my content for the week. Saturday mornings are effectively like a work fulfillment morning.
Oh, so like let's say on a Saturday, you would film a good amount, and then that's where you're going to be distributing the rest. It's not like every day you're filming.
No, I don't have time to film every day. But I don't know if you do this. I go through periods. So I'll go through like a recording block for like 1 to 2 weeks, I'm recording content. I'm recording either my solo episodes or I've booked in interviews. Then I'll go through like a big editing block. So I kind of alternate between the two. I kind of get into like...
Oh, you do your own edits?
Yeah, I do it all myself.
Okay.
Yeah. But do you do yours?
No.
Yeah, I'll get there soon.
So now we didn't touch on your fitness e-commerce business.
Sure.
Which you founded with your best friend.
Yes.
Which I'm sure you get a lot of questions about it. How do you do business with your best friend? You know where I'm coming from.
I know the question. No, I know the question. And I have to say, we're very blessed to have had the type of relationship that I think was perfect for business. And I'll explain, because I have a lot of beautiful friends, but I would not go into business with all of them. So I think, and I mean, I only can kind of say this now after having run a business with her and reflecting on it. But I think what worked for us is we had a relationship where there was neither of us held back in saying what we wanted to say to the other, right? It was always very honest, her more so than me. Like even something as simple as, you know, if we were out in the shops and I picked up something that I really liked, I'm like, what do you think? She's like, I don't like it. Whereas most people would just be nice and be like, oh yeah, it's nice if you like it. You know, you'd buffer around a little bit. She's just straight up like tells me how it is. And I learned a lot from her, the value of being that transparent up front. So I think because we had that level of communication, and I'd honestly say that is the number one thing, having open communication, because for both of us, the e-commerce business was a side thing. It wasn't our full-time thing. So naturally, her job has a season where it was crazy busy, and mine also, right? And sometimes it wouldn't always be at the same time. So if we didn't have that level of communication, you can fall into a place where you're like, well, they're not doing anything. They're just bludging. And then you get angry and reactive without communicating how you feel.
Yeah.
And so I think, honestly, because we had that level of communication at the very beginning, and it's always been the case, and we've been
But
close.
this is the actual question. Like, how do you get into those conversations without hurting
Losing
your
the
friend?
friendship?
Yeah, hurting your friend. Yeah.
You definitely have to be measured in how you bring things up, right? And I think it helps if you really know the other person and what they care about, because that helps you bring an awareness to how you raise things. And this is something I've learned in my own personal relationship with my fiance. The way I used to bring things up for him was really like, after the first 3 words, like he's checked out, because I've brought it up in almost like I'm accusing him kind of way, rather than reframing it in a way where I am asking him for help, right? So I think when you get to that level where you understand someone, and if you've got a friend that's been in your life a long time, you've probably gone through a lot of different changes together. And at that point, we'd been friends for like 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
So I knew her very well. I know what she cares about. And we're not perfect. We had moments where it was like, not a fight. I wouldn't say we've ever had a full-blown fight, but it was tense. You know, and we had to have tough conversations, and we had
It's
to.
a business.
Yeah. And I mean, I say this always with any relationship, whether it's romantic or in friendships, like you have to go through those awkward, tough disagreements almost to then work out, oh, okay, this is how you like to deal with conflict, or this is how you like to bring up conflict. Maybe you need space and time, but I want to resolve it straight away. So how do we make that work? You have to go through those experiences. It's very difficult to know all of those things up front, even if you know your friend inside out. I think business throws things at you. I always say we're professional firefighters because no textbook could prepare you for things that come your way. And so I think having the open communication as a baseline, but then keeping it open and just learning and growing together and just being transparent. You know, if there was a moment where I was like, look, I'm just not happy with this, or I feel unheard or unseen. I feel like I'm doing a lot of work right now, and, you know, just being honest with each other. And definitely it helps that I think we held space for each other, because you can be honest, but it can be not received well as well. So I think the communication layered with the space for that communication is really important.
For the listeners, tell us about the business. So it's called As Fit.
ES Fit. So
ES Fit.
Yeah, that's okay. So my name's Erika. Her name's Simone. It's very unoriginal. E and S. It actually
Makes
started. We were running just boot camps. One thing I forgot to mention is while I was at uni, I became a personal trainer. Only because I worked out the maths. It was cheaper for me to be employed and work there than pay membership. So for me, I was like, this is a business deal. I'm saving money by upskilling, you know, and running the classes and then training there.
And that didn't take from your law school time?
No, I was working part-time anyway. I mean, law was pretty intense, but if I'd just done that, I probably would have gone mad. So I was working in a cafe, and then I ended up switching and working in the gym. So she had a similar kind of story. We started running local boot camps for women in our community, and then COVID hit. And so what we did was we were just posting online workouts just for free. And I think it was just right place, right time. We got a lot of traction because everyone was working out from home. And we thought, what do we do with this? And we always were talking about starting something, but never seriously. And like with any business, you got to think, okay, what's a pain point I'm experiencing? What's a problem I have? And how can I do better than what's on the market? And for us, that pain point was good quality fitness accessories that felt feminine. This might sound a bit strange, but I felt like all the really good quality stuff was
more manly,
more masculine, or fluoro. Everything was just fluoro. I don't know if it was a thing at the time, or it was one supplier only. So we thought, how do we kind of combine the two? Because we, you as women, sometimes you spend a lot of money on your activewear, and then putting not good quality stuff on top of it just didn't feel like a good match. It's you're investing in your workout. You want good quality things that are going to be durable, that are not going to ruin your activewear. So that's where the idea came from. And then layered with COVID, it was about hygiene. So we've done full-size sweat towels that cover a whole yoga mat, rather than those little ones that cover nothing, even in the gym, like the benches, it covers the full thing, into resistance bands. And then we love Pilates. So we did ankle weights. And it's been just it's definitely not, it's not my full-time thing. It manages itself now. It's at a point. But it's a lot of fun, and it's just pure passion and love for us both. We love it. And whenever I go back to Australia, we run boot camps. That's, the community part of that is really nice to tap into. And again, skills I don't get to do in my 9 to 5. So.
All right. And on a last note, how would you describe the high performance mindset?
I think it's a desire to want more for yourself, as well as bettering yourself in a way that you feel like you never have the answers, and you're always open to the opportunities and answers that you're yet to discover.
Amazing. Mic drop.
That's how I would describe it.
This has been a great session.
Thank you. I appreciate having me on.
Likewise. And hopefully we're going to have another one.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of things we did not dive into, but nonetheless, I think there was a lot of good gems that you dropped throughout the episode that the listeners can take and benefit from.
Awesome.
Thanks, Erika.
Thank you so much.